I knew I should have asked to go before morning. I think there are two things that have got to happen that are really not being done at the moment. One of them is exposing the rights agenda. The media is doing an atrocious job of that. And the other is proposing a significantly better agenda. And I'm afraid the Labour Party is doing a pretty bad job of doing that. In terms of exposing the right, there's a perfect symbol to me. I don't know if anyone's come across him, of David Cameron's New Conservative Party. Has anyone seen Jacob Rees-Mogg? Do you know who he is? He's been selected for one of their safe seats. He's a 40-year-old man, and everywhere he goes he's accompanied by his nanny, who he calls Nanny. And he's recently been ribbed a little bit by me about this. And he said, listen, if I've got a nanny, I've got a nanny. And if anyone doesn't like it, tough, I'm keeping nanny. He then added, I promise you I'm not making this up, you can check the quote. I do wish you wouldn't keep going on about nanny. If I had a valet, you'd think it was perfectly normal. 5 minutes later, in a speech, he said, the problem with Britain today is the nanny state. And you might think this is like a lone freak, but actually David Cameron is very close to this PG Woodhouse conservatism. In an interview with Dylan Jones recently, he said, you know, the papers keep complaining that my wife Samantha comes from a very blue-blooded background. But actually, she's very unconventional. She went to a day school. In the same interview, he revealed he didn't know how many houses he owned. First he thought it was 2, then he thought it was 3, then he thought it was 4, then he said, well, my wife does own a field near Scunthorpe, which is in fact a 100-acre estate. Now, this is again, goes right through the Conservative Party. George Osborne recently said that his inheritance tax cut on properties worth £1 million would benefit people living in council houses. He said his £20,000 a year private school, St Paul's, is, quote, incredibly liberal, because you can be anyone there. Your mother could be the head of a giant corporation or a solicitor in Kew. I love this idea that the lowest variety in Britain. Who will help the children of the solicitors from Kew? You know, there's nothing wrong with being born into a rich family. It's stupid to hate someone for being born into a rich family as for being born into a poor family. You don't choose your family. What you do choose is what you do when you grow up. Some very great people were born into rich families. Franklin Roosevelt, the greatest progressive president of the 20th century, was born into a rich family and he spent his life crusading for the poor. George Orwell went to Eton and he was the greatest socialist this country ever created. The difference is, these people spend their lives cultivating and protecting their class interests in a way that will very significantly affect this country. Imagine that you thought council houses were worth £1 million. Now imagine you're making policies that will affect this country. It would warp you in all sorts of ways, and we don't have to speculate about that. One of their priorities is a tax cut for the richest 3,000 estates in Britain. Now look around Britain and you think, what's wrong with our country today? I know the richest 3,000 estates don't have enough money. Let's give them some more. And it's a really revealing thing about our media. That's not considered an act of class war. Transferring money from everyone in this room to the richest 3,000 people is not considered class war. But if I criticise it, if Ken criticises it, we're called class warriors. There's something very revealing about the assumption here. There's a great line Warren Buffett, the billionaire, said. He said, you know, let's face it, there's a class war going on, my side's winning. And this affects it in the sense that David Cameron is pickled in a market fundamentalist ideology that says that anything the state does will threaten the interests of people like him and so must be opposed. And he's proposing something really quite extreme. Paul Krugman, the Nobel Prize-winning economist, when I read him Cameron's quote, said, my God, this is pure Herbert Hoover, it's economically illiterate. The idea that in the middle of a recession, or when we're in a very fragile recovery, you should start hacking chunks out of state expenditure and cause a fall in demand is crazy. But we don't have to just listen to Paul Krugman, we don't have to just look at the history, that in fact, when this was tried in the 1930s, the Cameron approach, the depression got much worse. Actually, someone who's doing a really perfect test, you know, little laboratory experiment, as Francis mentioned, in Ireland, just next door, they're doing exactly what David Cameron says we should do. They've got a €60 billion budget, €60 billion budget, and they're cutting 15 billion of it. And the result has been very clear. The economist Rob Brown said, there has been an astonishing 15% shrinkage in the Irish economy. This is the sharpest contraction ever experienced by any industrial nation in peacetime. Currently, 14% of Irish people think their government is doing a good job. Now, that is the route David Cameron wants us to follow. It's very interesting. If you look at the countries that are coming out of recession, they're doing exactly the opposite. In China, 88% of their GDP growth is through fiscal stimulus, through government spending, the very thing David Cameron says we shouldn't be doing, and they've been the first major economy to come out of the recession. So I think in terms of loads of politicians who originally took the Cameron line, like Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, are so impressed by the evidence from Ireland, from China, from across the world, they've totally changed their position and they're in favour of fiscal stimulus. So, I think it's very clear, vote blue and get ready to sing the blues. But we've got to also be proposing a good alternative, and it's really important, this late in the day in a Labour government, we can really see, when this government is remembered, the times when it was just like the right, when it supported the right's agenda, will be remembered as the great disgraces of the government, whether it is the catastrophe in Iraq where 1 million people have died, whether it's the deregulation of the banks, which got us into this mess, which I'm afraid Tony Blair and Gordon Brown supported every step of the way. But the times when it broke with the Tories, when it really picked a fight, which have been far too few, will be remembered as amazing achievements, whether it's the doubling of spending on the NHS, the minimum wage, civil partnerships for gay people. So I think looking forward, we need to remember that lesson. Now, I think it's pretty hard to imagine the context in which Labour is going to win the election, but we are going to have to really look at rebuilding Labour and getting a good system later on. And I think there is one solution which actually addresses the two great crises that face us. At the moment, we've got to spend a huge amount of money to reinflate, to get the economy going again. We're also facing the unbelievable crisis of global warming, and I've been reporting over the past few years from all sorts of places where people are already dying, whether it's Darfur, where they're killing each other because all the water dried up, or Bangladesh, where I've been to villages where everyone's dying because everything's rising, water is rising so fast. We've also got to deal with that at the same time. Now, Keynes said, when we're trying to reflate the economy, spend money on anything. He proposed paying people to dig holes, bury money, and then pay someone else to dig the money up. Now, we're lucky, we don't have to do that. We've got to spend a fortune anyway on a massive transition away from fueling our society by fossil fuels to fueling it by the wind, by the waves, and by the sun, which we can do. So, you bring these two things together, you have a Green New Deal. Spend a fortune having a big transition. This is labour intensive, and you can only do it here. You can only insulate a loft in Hull in Hull. You can fix it so the wind turbines have to be put up here and built by British people. This is a really good plan, a Green New Deal. This is the kind of agenda Labour's got to be looking at, because we've learned one thing from the past 12 years. The Labour Party has to go big, go bold, or they might as well go home. Thank you.